And Jordan Marshall actually had a request. He said, "Hey David, two things. Can you tell us the story of showing the evidence of Jesus' death to Nabeel's dad in the religious circle? And two, how to take down Muhammad and the Quran in one statement or phrase." So Anthony, if you want to think about how to take down Muhammad and the Quran in one statement or phrase, I would have to think about that one because I've never been in a situation where I only have access to one statement or phrase. But as far as I think the story that you're referring to is a situation where Nabeel's dad came over with Nabeel to Mike Lacona's house, and Mike Lacona was there with Gary Habermas, and so it was me, Nabeel, Gary Habermas, Mike Lacona, and Nabeel's dad. And the situation was, I'm always asking Muslim questions about what they believe and why they believe, and what sort of evidence is important to them, what would surprise them, because people are different and they respond to different things. And so when I first met Nabeel, he was telling me that Islam is proven true by logic and history and science and mathematics, and everything in the world proves that Islam is true, and if you just examine it with an open mind, you'll see that it's true. And so we got into a variety of discussions along the way. And one day, I even remember we were in the room that was the meeting place for our speech and debate team, and I asked him, what would bother you if you saw it, right? What would make you start to doubt that Islam is true if it happened? Because I'm trying to find out what sort of evidence would qualify as a problem for Islam with him. And Nabeel said that he has so much respect for his dad that if he saw his dad sort of backed into a corner or unable to answer, then he would start to have a problem. He would have to wonder whether he has good reasons for believing in Islam, because he had really had a lot of confidence in Islam because of what his dad had told him while he was growing up. So obviously, if his dad didn't know what he was talking about, then he might have to start rethinking things. So anyway, I knew Mike Lacona was working on a book. That's the Case for the Resurrection of Jesus. You can still get that with Gary Habermas, and so I invited Nabeel to bring his dad over, and there was supposed to be someone else there, some Muslim scholar who was going to come with them. So Nabeel, the original plan was for me and Nabeel to moderate the discussion between Gary Habermas and Mike Lacona on the one hand, and Nabeel's dad and another Muslim on the other hand. And somehow right at the end, the other Muslim couldn't make it, and so the idea was I would kind of moderate the discussion, and it would be Nabeel and his dad on one side and Gary and Mike on the other. And so that discussion went on for a while, and I was actually getting slightly annoyed because Gary and Mike were being much too nice, right? I mean, I could tell that Nabeel's dad or Nabeel would say something, and they could absolutely annihilate it. I know they could, but they were trying to be nice, right? They weren't trying to hurt anyone's feelings. So they just kept letting them go over and over again, making these very strange points. And it was getting towards the end, and I was like, gosh, Gary and Mike are almost just letting Nabeel and Nabeel's dad dominate the discussion the entire time. So what's going on here? And finally, Nabeel's dad mentioned as evidence that Jesus survived crucifixion the Shroud of Turin. And so he brought up the Shroud of Turin there, and then Gary sort of just perked up and went into a different mode and said, wait, you're granting, you believe that the Shroud of Turin is authentic? And Nabeel's dad said, yes. And Gary turned to Nabeel and said, do you agree? You believe that the Shroud of Turin is authentic? And Nabeel said, yes. And then Gary said, well, then you've got quite a problem here, because I've written 3 books on that, and let me tell you what the Shroud of Turin actually shows. And then so Gary just went on this awesome tirade of all the details in the Shroud of Turin that would show conclusively that someone, whoever was in the shroud, was dead. And so just to be clear, there are people who don't believe that the shroud is authentic. But if you grant that the shroud is authentic, then you run into all kinds of issues. There's clear evidence that rigor mortis had set in, which that happens when you die. There's evidence that the serum and the blood had started separating, which that means you're dead. So there are all these kinds of issues that show that whoever was in the shroud, if it's authentic, and Nabeel and his dad were granting that it is, would require the person to be dead. And so that sort of finished the discussion on that note, and I was very happy. And Nabeel's dad had to leave. He said, I had to leave. And Nabeel said, can I stay? And Nabeel's dad said, no, I need you at home. I didn't think he needed him home, but I think that he was getting nervous, that Nabeel was going to get some information that would cast doubt on Islam. So that was that situation. And, at the end of the day, you have to have massive respect for both Nabeel and his dad for being willing to go in there and talk to two Christians who specialize in historical Jesus studies. So that was really cool, and fortunately, it turned out well. So